Well, welcome to this edition of the 700 Club. We ask ourselves, is the Trump diplomacy the way to go? In a stunning move, the president defied his own intelligence agencies, spoke out in favor of Russian President Vladimir Putin. Trump said he believed Putin's claim that Russia did not meddle in the elections was true.
Well, those remarks came as the two leaders were standing together at a summit in Helsinki. Now Democrats, many Republicans, and members of the media are calling on the president to reverse course. CBN national security correspondent Eric Rosales has the fallout.
President Trump is back at the White House. Welcomed by protesters after his one-on-one meeting with Russia President Vladimir Putin, the man U.S. intelligence says was behind the meddling in the 2016 presidential election.
I do feel that we have both made some mistakes. I have great confidence in my intelligence people, but I will tell you that President Putin was extremely strong and powerful in his denial today.
The president later tweeted, "I have great confidence in my intelligence people. However, I also recognize that in order to build a brighter future, we cannot exclusively focus on the past. As the world's two largest nuclear powers, we must get along." Putin denied the charges.
The Russian state has never interfered and is not going to interfere into internal American affairs, including election process.
But just days ago, special counsel Robert Mueller's investigation led to the indictment of 12 Russian military officers for conspiring to interfere with the 2016 election. In his first post-meeting comments, the president again appeared not to call out Putin.
We get questions on the witch hunt, and I don't think the people out in the country buy it.
Putin did not deny the hacking took place in an interview with Fox News' Chris Wallace.
The idea was about hacking an email account of a Democratic candidate. Was it some rigging of facts? Was it some forgery of facts? That's the important thing that I'm trying to, the important point that I'm trying to make. Was this any false information planted? No, it wasn't.
President Trump's statements didn't sit well with both sides on Capitol Hill. House Speaker Paul Ryan said, "No question, Russia interfered with the election and is not our ally." And Ryan wasn't alone. Republican Arizona Senator John McCain called President Trump's conference with Putin one of the most disgraceful performances by an American president. South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham called it a missed opportunity by President Trump to firmly hold Russia accountable.
The president took the word of the KGB over the brave, hardworking men and women of the CIA.
Current and former intelligence top brass condemned President Trump's statements. National Intelligence Director Dan Coats said, "We have been clear in our assessments of Russia's meddling in the 2016 election." And former CIA Chief John Brennan called President Trump's actions nothing short of treasonous. Other big issues discussed, like Russia's illegal annexation of Crimea and nuclear arms, didn't get much attention. However, Syria held up a point of possible collaboration between the two. Both sides said that they would work together on a humanitarian basis for the country and ensure the security for neighboring countries like Israel. Eric Rosales, CBN News.
Sir, I want to say something. Dan Coats is an absolutely fabulous guy. And he's director of national intelligence when he was a former senator. And he is a strong conservative and a wonderful man. And if he comes out and says, we've got evidence, then you don't diss him in meeting with a dictator. But Putin is an accomplished liar. He is one of the most artful liars that you have ever seen. I watched an interview with Chris Wallace, and I might say Chris Wallace was brilliant in his questioning, but Putin was also brilliant in deflecting all these things, and he wouldn't really answer any of the questions. But the truth is that he wants to have a peace offensive so he can get away with some of the stuff he's doing. He's moved on the Ukraine. Of course, he took over Crimea, and he then wants to bring the Russian influence to bear in Syria, move back into the Middle East and exercise hegemony in that area. And but I know Trump didn't want to have a big slugfest with him, But you've got to watch what you're doing, and you have to be scripted, and you have to have people sit down and say, Mr. President, here is the party line. And, you know, I remember years ago when George Bush the first was running, and they gave him everyday little cards. Before he got the little cards, he was out doing ad lib, and his poll numbers were in the tank. The minute he began to follow exactly word for word what it was giving him, his poll numbers jumped back up again, because off the cuff he wasn't handling the questions properly. And it's so hard to do it. I don't care how brilliant you are, it's hard to come up spur of the moment every time with the right answer.
But can I just ask a question? Because you're far more knowledgeable about how this functions than I. Why would you send the leader of your country to a meeting like that without clearly showing him evidence that that had happened if you had it? Why does the public not get to see what the evidence is?
What Trump was, and we'll bring that out in just a minute, Trump had been charged with collusion with the Russians. And he wanted to make sure that people didn't think that there was collusion. One is meddling in the election, the other is collusion. But what we also have to ask ourselves, why did the Justice Department decide they wanted to indict these people days before this summit? The Justice Department, in my opinion, is too political. They are trying to enter into politics all the time, and they shouldn't be doing it. Well, our chief political correspondent, David Brody, has joined us there. David, you give me your take of why you think the president made those comments, given the history between the two countries.
Well, Pat, a few things. First of all, this is the art of the deal run amok. It's gone off the rails. I mean, what he tried to do, obviously, is try to butter up Putin. You know, he's looking toward the future. He's playing the long game. He wants some victories. Remember, he talks about how you're going to be so sick of winning with me as president. And that was the whole Kim Jong-un situation as well. Remember, he came back from that meeting and said, solve that problem, let's move on. You know, this is what Donald Trump does. And so he's hoping with Vladimir Putin that he's going to get some victories in the long run. But in the middle of all of that, in the short term, he whiffed. I don't think there's any question about it. It was an unforced error, Pat. There was no reason for him to go on a international stage and say what he said. There were so many ways to get around that, to simply say, look, we're looking into it, our Justice Department's on top of it. Whatever he wanted to say, he just wouldn't go there, and there's so many different reasons for it. But let's be honest, Pat, he does not trust certain folks in the intelligence community. He's been burned by Comey, Peter Strzok and Lisa Page we know about. We can go on and on. He's still angry at Jeff Sessions. I mean, the bottom line is that he does have some concerns about what has happened to him in the intelligence community, and that has just rubbed him the wrong way, and he just can't let it go.
Well, you know, Newt Gingrich, who's on the team, says it's the most serious mistake of his presidency. Do you think there's some way he's going to fix it, or is this fixable?
Well, I think this would be a great time for him to apologize, but laugh, laugh, laugh. That's not going to happen. We know that he's not going to do that. As a matter of fact, even early this morning, he's up and at him after about 2 or 3 or 4 hours of sleep, and he's already on Twitter thanking Rand Paul, one of his supporters in Congress, for basically coming to his defense, saying that Rand Paul gets it. And what Rand Paul is talking about is this idea that why should Trump trust a lot of folks in that intelligence community when they've had it in for him and they have this bias against him? And so this is what Donald Trump is going to do. And I think I see a double down strategy here, Pat. But I can tell you this, that Newt Gingrich seemed to be pretty spot on. If you're getting criticism from Newt Gingrich, that's a problem. That's something you got to deal with.
Well, you know, the thing of it is, when you're a president, you surround yourself with advisors, and they go over word for word what's got to be said, exactly the scenario. You war game the situation. I don't think Trump does any of that, does he?
No, and some of the criticism he's getting is that while Vladimir Putin was preparing for the summit, Donald Trump was golfing in Scotland for a couple of days, and that might be a little bit unfair criticism. But the point is that Trump likes to, go with his gut and feel the instinct and work the room and all of that. But when you're on the international stage and you come up with this idea of both countries are responsible, and those were his words, that's a direct quote, both countries are responsible. Look, I understand what he was saying. He's talking about the intelligence community and some in the intelligence community. But it is very hard to use the moral equivalency argument on an international stage when Barack Obama was accused for a lot of the same things. I know it was a different context. The good news for Donald Trump is that he's branded himself as a Make America First guy. I think he's been pretty solid in that area, obviously, whereas Barack Obama had that branded image as the apologist, in chief. And I think that may help mitigate some of this damage right now, Pat.
We have to ask ourselves, where did Putin come from? He was KGB, but he's a colonel. And the next thing you know, Boris Yeltsin is stumbling around half drunk all the time. And Putin emerges from that milieu to become the undisputed dictator of Russia. He is very rich. He has enriched his buddies. He has put down dissent. I mean, it's a pattern of unbelievable mendacity. And why in the world doesn't somebody warn the president what he's getting into?
Well, I think many people have warned the president of what he's getting into, but Donald Trump does what Donald Trump wants to do, and I think he's attracted to that strongman quality of Vladimir Putin. He said some things along those similar lines about Kim Jong-un, who we know is a ruthless dictator. And so you can go on and on. Look, this is part of the, as you know, Pat, you take the whole package with Donald Trump. He can be good on 70, 80% of what you like. And then, boy, 20% you look at it and go, my goodness, does that smell over there in the corner? And this was a smelly moment. Rather than Helsinki, maybe it's Hell Stinky for President Trump, because that's what it felt like for sure the other day.
We understand former CIA Director John Brennan, because he's not exactly Trump's friend, but he says Trump's statement is an impeachable offense. That, of course, is over the top, isn't it?
Well, it sure is over the top. And here's the danger for Democrats and liberals. Here they go again, as Ronald Reagan would say. They may overplay their hand. And if they're going to start talking treason, remember before it was like they talked about impeachment and everybody was like, oh, no, that's good. Democrats have gone too far. Well, if they start talking about treason, here they go again. They're going far left on the treason factor, and that could alienate them from midterm election voters. And once again, I think right now what the best strategy really for Democrats and liberals is let it play out organically. I mean, Donald Trump did not have his best day as president for sure in Helsinki. Let it travel organically and don't step in a pile of you-know-what, because that's exactly what Democrats could do right now if they decide to overplay their hand. And by the way, speaking of overplaying their hand, the media, Pat, the media has gone off the rails on this. And once again, this plays right into Donald Trump's hands. If the media starts to really get on Donald Trump's case so much, boy, that just makes Donald Trump even stronger.
He'll hit right back at him. Well, David, thank you so much for joining us. David Brody, our foreign affairs correspondent and political analyst. But it's an amazing thing that a fellow as smart as Trump could have stepped into this, but maybe he knows what he's doing. You'd like to think he is. It looks like it's accidental, but we'll see.